Okay, so good morning, everyone. Good morning. Welcome. No, you guys are not. Good morning? Good morning. Ah, now it's better. Welcome, everyone. So, this month we are going to talk about Genesis, and Marcio is going to start giving like a little brief of what Genesis is and some other insights. He's going to talk about Allan Kardec and Genesis. And today, Michelle, we're going to do our initial reading and prayer as well.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's good to see new faces and don't say old face. Yeah, returning face.
There are no older faces.
We go to read a message from this book, Our Father, by the Spirit May and Chic Xavier. That kingdom come this way, how Jesus prayed to the Heavenly Father, knowing that God's plan is the only one that can bring us true happiness. But the Master did not just ask for it. He worked hard and did everything possible so that the kingdom of heaven could find the foundation it needed on earth. With his own hands, he spread the blessing of peace and joy, so that men and women could become better people. A train cannot run without the proper tracks. A car cannot move forward without the road that was made for it. A well-prepared meal must be made with all of the right seasonings. Likewise, help from above requires our own efforts. We must continually purify our sentiments in order to receive it and spread it. Without goodness in our hearts, we will be unable to feel God's goodness or recognize the goodness of our fellow humans. At night time, when we pray, may light shine down on us. We must offer up a lamp or candle, so that light might shine our midst. If we pray for divine grace, let us prepare our sentiments to understand and display it so that happiness and harmony may live among us. Jesus worked for the coming of heavenly glory into the world by helping everyone and helping us as he endured the cross of sacrifice. He enables us to understand that the kingdom of God is love, and that is only through love that will shine amongst men and women for all eternity. Thank you for the big message. Let's close our eyes. Let this light be on our heart. Let's go. Be thankful for this morning, for this day, and ask for our Spirit's protector from this house to enlighten our friend Marcio, who is responsible for the lecture today, and we can bring a little message inside us to put in practice during the week, and blessing all our friends could be here today with us this morning. Thank you, and so be it. Okay, my friend Marcio, it's yours.
All right. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Okay. So, as Raquel said in the beginning, the theme of the month is Genesis, but yesterday was Allan Kardec birthday, right? He was birthed on October the 3rd, 1804. And what I'm going to do today is talk a little bit about Kardec while he was a Spiritist, when he became a Spiritist. I'm not talking about the entire story. There is this book. Unfortunately, it's in Portuguese, but this is a book there that this author, Marcio Lee, did a biography about Kardec. And it's really nice because it's based on a lot of letters that was given to him in all I'm assuming in French, and that he studied and put together this book. It's very nice. It's very easy to read for those who speak Portuguese, so it's a nice way to see how the Kardec brought all these books for us and what happened at that time. It's not only the books, but what Kardec was living at that time, all the situations, and we go through a few of them while I'm talking about Kardec's incarnation. Okay, so I'm gonna start with Allan Kardec, and then we go a little bit deeper on the Genesis. That is the theme of the month. My idea was to bring a few things that Genesis have and explain a little bit about this book, that a kind of introduction for the next lectures that we're gonna go deeper on this. So let's talk about Allan Kardec. As I said, he was born on October the 3rd, 1804, and he was Catholic, but his name was not Allan Kardec. I don't know if many of you know that, but his name was, I hope I pronounced this correctly, Hippolyte Léon Denisard Rivail. So he was French, and he was a very educated person, a scientist. He had a lot of, he studied a lot of different courses, including a Bachelor of Arts degree in science and a doctorate in medicine. So he was very intellectual person with a lot of information, and he was also passionate about education. He was disciple from Pestalozzi, who was an educator at that time, and he studied a lot of that, and that passion for education made him meet to his wife, Amélie Gabrielle Baudet. Thank you. And both of them, when they got married, she had more than 40 years old, and she was in a wealth of family. So the both of them were passionate about education, and they opened a school together. So they were both teaching in that school, and that was a passion for both of them. And before Spiritism, under the name Hippolyte Léon, he published about 20 books, right, in different topics, and so he's part of his education. And then we're gonna talk a little bit why he changed his name to Allan Kardec. But let's start with Professor Rivail, when he participated in the first meeting, mediumistic meeting in Mrs. de Planimism house. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it. Probably not, right? And that was the first time that Kardec participated in a mediumistic meeting, right? At that time, it was very common in different houses. They do this communication with spirit. It was a kind of how can I say? They are playing with that. It was not as serious as we take in Spiritism today, but it's like when we were kids. I don't know how many of you guys did the play with the table and the glass and the table. We do that kind of things when we were kids, right? So they were in that stage. They are doing, well, if I was saying that he didn't, well, some of us who did. So they were there in that moment, and Kardec studied hypnosis, somnambulism, and magnetic fluids at that time. So he wanted to understand that. Well, he was there in that meeting to honestly not to understand the spiritual world, but trying to prove that was not real, right? That he didn't believe in the spirits at that time, so he thought that it was just a magnetic force that was making the tables moving around, right? So that time the mediums was making tables moving and when they ask questions, the tables moving and knocking in the floor would make noises, and they create answers to that thing, right? So he was there to try to prove there is no spirits, there are no ghosts talking through the tables, right? And before the session started, he looked at the table. He tried to find anything that could prove that it was a fraud before it even starts, and he couldn't find anything. Nothing that anything that he could prove that it was not real. So, in that time, we all know that it was a lot of science. It was a boom of science. A lot of things happening. And religion and science were fighting each other. Religion say things that science will say, this does not make sense because we find out this, and this in science that prove that what you're saying in religion is not right. So they are trying to fight each other, and that was the moment that Kardec, as a scientist, had to prove something, right? Had to prove that it was in the science side trying to prove that. And after the session, Kardec left the session with a question: if there is or not intelligence force doing all of that, right? Because he couldn't prove in any way there was not a intelligence force there, because the questions that was answered was all need to have some intelligence to answer those things. It's not only a simple question, it brings more communications than that. And in that year, he also met the sisters Baudin. Those sisters in their house, they were doing questions, but it was not a simple question like, I gonna marry this guy or not? I gonna be rich or not? Where is the treasure of my grandfather, right? It was not that simple questions. It was more serious questions in trying to find out what the link between those things that the religion could not answer, like God questions about God, questions about what happened after we die, right? So he met them and start to participate in going more and more meetings to understand those spirits. So in a point that Kardec got through a lot of different experiments, right? He was a scientist, so he put the methodology in place to understand what was happening. So Kardec did start to understand that and believe that it was a spirits there. He could prove there was an intelligence force answering those questions, right? And he started to receive a lot of communications. And it was in 1856 that participating on different meetings, communicating with different mediums, he started to receive all these communications and compiled a lot of different messages. Just a curiosity about Allan Kardec, his name, and he learned through in that two sisters' house that he was a druid during Julius Caesar Empire between 58 and 44 before Christ. So he was informed, by that spirit, and they told him that he was Allan Kardec in one of his incarnations, and he adopted that name to all the Spiritist book that he wrote. Right, it was a kind of his identity. as a spiritist, trying to separate his everything that he did before that, and those books specific for spiritism, right? And in that year, he also got some messages in his house. It was not really a message, but he was compiling all those information, trying to put some logic on this, understanding making sure that everything was connected, right? And he started to hear some knocks on the wall that he tried to explain what's going on here, right? Where this noise is coming from. And Paris was going for a lot of renovation, and the mayor of the city at that time was doing a lot of change, and he thought that it could be something that it's one of the constructions that were happening near to his house. And then the next day, in the sisters Baldwin house, he learned that those knocks was his guide spirit telling him that was not, he should stop, that was not right what he was writing. So that familiar spirit, that familiar spirit wasn't there with them, and he was allowed to ask some questions to that spirit, and he asked how he should call them, that spirit, what's the name, and the spirit just said to call he or her as the truth, right? And he asked if that name was related to the truth that he was looking for, right? And the answer for the spirit was, maybe I will be at least a guide which will protect and help you. So every month the Spirit of Truth was there talking to him, and answer whatever question he had. So it was not that anytime the spirit would go to his house or he would receive a message. There's a time, once a month, he was there, he would be receiving messages according to that. So very with a lot of discipline, right? We can remember Emmanuel telling Chico Xavier what he needs to be a good medium with discipline. So it always made me remember that. So he was working on that compilation of messages, and then in 1857 he published the Spirit's book, and it says there. So this is I copied in every slide. We talk about the book, the subtitle of each book. So it was funny because today we know the Spirit's book like that, but at that time they have the Spirit's book, and then in the front page they have all of that described as well. So it says, principles of the Spirit's doctrine concern the immortality of the soul, the nature of spirits and their relationships with humankind, moral laws, the present life, the future life, and the destiny of humanity, according to the teachings given by highly evolved spirits for several mediums, received and coordinated by Allan Kardec. So the Spirit's book has more than 1,000 questions, questions and items. There is a few of them. There are items. There was just a description, more detailed explanation about some questions, but more than 1,000 questions answered by different spirits. And at that time, those messages was received in many different spirit centers and in many different countries. It was not all in Paris in different spirit centers, but in different parts of the world. What gave at that time, they don't have internet, email, those kind of things, fax or phone. So it was everything through letter. It takes long time to get the answer, right? So imagine how much work it was to put all of that together. But at the same time, it brought a lot of how can I say, confidence, right? That there was no fraud there. Because today, if we can text each other and say, hey, ask this question there, and someone else could pass the answer. Like when we're doing exams, right? We cannot take our phones with us anymore because, we can get the answer from the phone. It's so easy to manipulate those things. So at that time, it was not that easy, right? So it was good. It was the perfect timing to happen. And the Spirit's book is also the backbone of all the other books. So if you go and read the Genesis, you see a lot of questions here is in a lot of answers or things that is elaborated in this book is part of the Spirit's book as well. The same as the Gospel, the Medium's book. Everything is somehow connected there, right? So the Spirit's book, it's divided in 4 parts. The first one talk about the first cause. So we talk about God. We talk about creation. Talk about the vital principle. Then the second part is about the spiritual world. So it talks about the spirits, reincarnation, what happened, how it is the spiritual life. It talks about when you're sleeping, right? What happened when you're sleeping? Our spirit has is free, has the emancipation of the spirit that happened. So he talks about it. And if I'm not wrong, it's the last part of that part. It talks about the intervention of the spirits in the material world. So what happened to us? We keep saying that we are all mediums. So they come here and they help us, right? Some of them don't help us, but they're here as well, right? So we can have that connection with them. Then the third part talked about the moral laws, the different laws that we have, that it's not God saying do this or do that. It's really laws that govern the earth and our incarnations, what happened to us. So it talks about the divine laws, the law of labor, reproduction, society, and progress, right? We're gonna, when we're talking about Genesis, I'm gonna touch a little bit about some of them. And then the last part is about hopes and consolation. It talks about what happiness is, why we're here, why we have fear of death. It talks about the future life. It talks about heaven, hell, and purgatory. I think many of us may ask those questions. What happened? What the hell is, what the heaven is, what the purgatory is. So he bring and because he was a Catholic person, he knew all of that and probably questioned all of that, right? So he tried to put some answers to that. And of course, what happened next is that he started to receive a lot of people from science, from the press, from the church, saying you're crazy. This is all evil, blah blah blah. And so he had to prove every time. And 1 year later, he starts a magazine that talks about Spiritism, right? So he started to receive a lot of questions, a lot of letters, from people with more questions or people that was thanking him for that, because it makes so much sense and helped them so much to go through many things that he thought, one book is not enough, and he was told by his spirit guide that it was not 1 or 2 or 3 books that would be enough to change the mind of many people. So he put together this magazine that was sent once a month, and every month he answered as much as he could questions that come from those letters. So instead of answer back one by one, he put the question there, and sometimes one letter could answer a lot of them. So that was what he was putting together. In this book, it's nice that it tells us that some letters that he received, it was saying that people that have been hospitalized because of the communication with spirits, or people that lost their jobs because they start to say, I'm a spiritist, I believe on this, right? And and we can remember things that happen with Christians, right? When Jesus came, how many Christians die, because they are saying, I believe in Jesus. I think he's the Messiah. I think he has the so good teachings there that I want to follow him, and they die because of that, right? So in Kardec's time, they were not dying, but they were losing their jobs, they're losing their families and going to a hospital, etc. That, it's not dying, but it's a way to be retaliated. Yeah, thank you. I was trying to find the word. So somehow, right? So that happened that time as well. So and I feel that in some locations it may happen today, right? If we go to a country where the religion is the most important thing, if you profess your belief in spiritism, that can be a problem, right? So, because of all the questions that he received, and one Catholic magazine in April 13, 1859, the Abbot Francois Chesnel, he started to question those messages and saying that could be a fraud. The mediums could be writing what they think and not what really a spirit would say. And he also called it Spiritism a new religion, right? And Kardec, he was a scientist. He didn't want Spiritism to be a religion. His point of view was that Spiritism was a science that studied the spiritual world. So he put together this book, What's the Spiritism, was the second book, just to explain that. It's a very short book with a lot of summary of about what that is. Okay. And we have in the same year, now 1 year later, in 1860, a new version of the Spirit's book was launched as well. Okay. So he continued his work, and then in 1961 he published the Medium's book. So let's see what that is. A special teaching by the Spirit concerning the theory of all the genders of manifestations, the means of communicating with the invisible world, the development of mediumship, the difficulties, the pitfall that may encounter in the practice of spiritism. So that book was a kind of manual of instructions for the mediums, right? What to do, what not to do, and we have the book is kind of split in two parts. It's split in two parts. The first part is some preliminary observations where he talked about the methodology that people should follow, the theories that he had when he went through spiritism. And he, as a scientist, in the beginning he didn't believe in anything of that, right? So he questioned a lot of things. So he was able to put together that part of the book to whoever have the same questions, what the answer would be, right? So it's not a question and answer part of the book, but it's as you go and start to read, it's funny because whatever the next question is in your mind, it's there in the book. It's very interesting. And then the second part of the book is talk about all the different type of manifestations, what is to be a medium, what is to be a good medium. That's another important part of the book. Talks about charlatanism. All of that is there. And it's the most important thing on that book is that when he says that it's better to reject 10 truths to admit one wrong message. So it's the methodology, analyzing, understanding all the message. It's key and very important in Spiritism and for Kardec as a scientist. Okay, and around that year as well, another thing happened in Barcelona, in Spain. The Spirit's book, some people requested the Spirit book, and Kardec sent a number of books to, I don't remember exactly how many books, but a number of books to Barcelona to be distributed there. But someone in the church got that book, a bishop in Barcelona, got into the books, and he burned all the books. And Kardec, before, when he knew that, he said, no, don't do it. At least send it back to us. And then we give to someone else another location. We distribute it in Paris. It was a lot of money that Kardec lost there. And in this book, it brings the Kardec was so upset with that, right? You know, how come a bishop can decide what people will read or not? It's not fair. It's not even his books. Give me back that. He was very upset. But then the spirits that was helping Kardec said, don't worry, everything will be fine, let it go. And what happened next was that, you know, instead of make people stop reading those books, the spirits book, it brought more curiosity to people to read that. So some bookshops, they put there in evidence, you know, this is the book, if you want it, we have here to sale. And other bookshops, they I don't know, right? The church is saying, no, I'll keep it here in the back. If someone asks me, I'll sell the book, right? But was not advertised that. So it was the opposite, you know, the fact that it happened was opposite to what the bishop wanted. So instead of stopping, it started to sell more and more books. So it was nice to see that happen. And also another thing that happened at that time was Kardec was I think I need to accelerate this. Kardec said that Kardec was accused to be rich because of those books, and he had to prove that every money that he got from those books, he was using to maintain the Parisian Society of Spirit Studies, you know, the Spirit Center that he was responsible for, and to publish more and more books, right? So the next year, in 1864, he published the Gospel According to Spiritism, that is the Gospel According to Spiritism, with the explanation of the moral maxims of Christ in concordance with Spiritism and their applications to the different circumstances of life. So that was the fourth book from Kardec, right? The original name was Imitation of the Gospel According to Spiritism. What they changed the name 3 years later just to be the Gospel According to Spiritism. And it was announced in the Spiritist magazine saying this book is to use of everyone. Each one can gather the ways to align to Christ's moral conduct. So basically, he was not creating a book just for Spiritists, right? He was creating a book that anyone could go there. Anyone who was studying the Bible or Christ, they could go there and understand a little bit more about that. So it was a continuation, like what Jesus said, that he didn't come to destroy the law. The same thing was for the gospel. The gospel, according to Spiritism, was not there to destroy everything that Christ has come to tell us. And, you know, it was a continuation, an explanation, a better way to see that. In 65, the Heaven and Hell was published. And what the Heaven and Hell is a comparative examination of the doctrines concerning the passage from corporal life to spirit life, concerning future punishments and reward, concerning angels and demons, concerning suffering, etc., followed by several examples reading the true situation of the soul during and after death. So this book talks about the justice, right? We always think about, okay, what happened? I go to hell, I go to heaven, right? And what is the justice God going to heaven while I'm born with a lot of disabilities and another person have everything good and go to hell just because it's healthy, right? So this book is very nice because it not only brings us the theory, the doctrine per se, but the examples. The second part, as he said, the examples is very nice. It's a lot of communications with different types of spirits. So you have happy spirits, average spirits, suicides, different stages of spirit when disincarnate that we can go through and hear from the spirits what happened, right? I don't know if you recall, but some books he said that it was with the help of elevated spirit or enlightened spirits. In this book, he doesn't say that because there was spirit that was suffering a lot, like suicide spirit, talking about their lives, right? Back to Kardec, as a person, at that time he was suffering a lot with health issues, and he was recommended by the spirit to rest a little bit, but he didn't stop. He continued working very hard on everything that he now had to do, and he was also worried about who would continue what he was doing, who would be his successor. And he asked that question to his guide, and who will continue. We need to prepare that person, right? And the spirit said, you don't need to worry about it. This is earthly issues that will be solved according to what needs to happen. So he learned that if he didn't went through everything, someone else would be prepared, was being prepared as well to do the work that Kardec done at that time. So it was sometimes we keep worried about having the control of everything, right? And the answer is, they up there, they have more plans than we can understand. So we don't need to worry about those things. And that was the moment that Kardec learned that lesson, right? 1868, the Genesis, the book that we're gonna talk more about today, was published. Okay, and it's the Spirit doctrine is the result of the collective and concordance teachings of the spirits. Science is called upon to present Genesis in accordance with the laws of nature. God proves God's greatness and power by immutability and not by the suspension of divine laws. For God, the past and the future are the present. So let's go and talk about this book. A lot of things happen in Kardec's life after this book. You need to read the book to know the details, how he disincarnated, etc. But the theme for the month is Genesis. Let's go in that detail. Okay? So I try to understand what Genesis word means, and in the dictionary it brings as the original or mode of formation of something. Synonyms are origin, source, root, beginning, start. And in the Bible, it's also the first book, and we need to remember that the first book, the Genesis, was written before science, before everything that we know in science today in the 19th century, right? So there is a lot of symbolic elements in that story. In the Genesis from Spiritism, it is aligned with science. So it was a time that Kardec put together, okay, what this earth creation, all of that bring to we can understand better now with science. And so he combined both things, the learnings from the Genesis book with the science at that time. And a lot of things we can learn from that book, from Genesis, as to understand the creation of the world, how the universe per se, etc. Okay, so it doesn't mean that the Bible, what is writing in the Bible, was wrong. It's not correct. It's what we understand at that time. So different cultures have different stories to how the word was created, but it's all based on their knowledge at that time, their understanding of it. The Spirit's book it also talks about the biblical considerations and account concerning the creation. So there is a topic only about that as an introduction to the Genesis book. Okay, so if we continue, Genesis, this new book, is one more step forward regarding the consequence and applications of Spiritism. As its title indicates, its objective is the study of the three areas that have until today been diversely interpreted and comment upon Genesis, miracles, and predictions, and how they relate to the new laws that have resulted from the observation of spirits phenomena. So he tells us in the very beginning, the introduction, that's part of the introduction of Genesis. I forgot to put the reference there, but it's part of Genesis, the introduction. And he also talks about the two forces that govern Earth, the material force and the spiritual force, right? We all need to understand that we have our spirit, but we have our body. That is all what connects to the material, right? So there's these two forces that need to work together to bring Earth to the level of progression that we want to. And what Spiritism brought to us in Genesis, and with all the science, is a combination of that science with spiritualism, right? This book will bring the science and spiritual teachings together to explain the word and the creation of the human beings. Okay, and then in the first part of the book, when he talks about Genesis, he talks about the role of science in Genesis. So the history of the origin of nearly all ancient peoples is mingled with their religions. So religions books, the old religions books, it's always talks about the creation and the beginning of the universe, right? And as I said, it talks about what their culture of that time was, and most of the time it also includes all the civil laws of that time. And it also talks as humans involved in their knowledge of those laws, they grasped the mysteries of creation and correct their former ideas about the origin of things. So with the progress, we can understand that better. With more knowledge, we can understand that better, and we can change it. We can put a new flavor to that based on what we know, right? People were unable to resolve the riddles of creation until the time in which the key was given by science. So, as I said, in the 19th century, a lot of things happened. The electricity, physics, astronomy. A lot of science, new science was born at that time, and a lot of new creations, new theories about humans and the Earth was created at that time. And then the question comes: so we now know everything? Do we know everything that we should know at this time? And continuing this chapter, it talks that there is a question there that is exactly about this. As it now stands in the 19th century, has science resolved all the difficulties in the problem of Genesis? And the Spirit's answer: certainly not. But it's incontestable that it has irretrievable destroyed all the crucial errors, and has laid down the most important fundamentals based upon irrefutable data. Properly speaking, the points until uncertain are only a matter of detail, though whose solution, whatever it may be in the future, cannot harm the whole. Furthermore, notwithstanding all the resources at its disposal, it has until now lacked an important element, without which the work could never be complete. So, it's not completed. There is a lot of still for us to learn, for us to evolve and bring into this knowledge, and it's all connected to the law of progress, right? On the Spirit's book, it brings us the understanding of the law of progress, and in the question 779, we have that question: do humans draw from within themselves the power to progress, or it progress nothing them the result of education? And he said they advance naturally by themselves. Not all progress at the same time or in the same manner. However, it is through social contact that the most advanced help to others to progress. So there's two types of progress that we need to understand, right? Kardec in the Genesis tells about the two forces, material and spiritual. And in the Spirit's book, it talks about the moral and intellectual. That somehow is connected, right? The intellectual will help us to progress in the material world, right? The moral and the spiritual world. So it's the two aspects of progressions that we always need to worry about. So we are here, we are in Earth, we need to do material things as well. We need to progress, make this world to progress as well. In terms of material things, technology, new science, new knowledge on medicine, all of that need to progress as well. Because as an evolved spirit, we want to live in a nice world, right? We don't want to live in a miserable place. There is no conditions for live. We're progressing. It's part of it's natural for us to want to something better. So on the question 780, the Spirit's book, it tells us that the moral progress is how we progress on the comprehension between good and bad. So one thing is our progression intellectually and make things better. The moral thing is how we do we distinguish the good and the bad, and then go towards the good thing. Another thing that it brought us on that chapter is about the human beings stopping the progress. So if you think about it, can we stop the progress to happen? Can we stay forever in the same stage? No, the answer is no. The spirits answer that we cannot. We can delay it a little bit, but somehow it will come, and it will make it happen. The spirituality will make it happen for all of us. Okay. So then we are progressing towards what, right? And the Gospel according to Spiritist bring us the different category in a habitated world. So we know that there's different levels. So there's many different levels, but Kardec classified it in 5 ones, just to make it simpler for us to understand. But it's not, everybody is exactly in the same level, all the words have exactly the same. No, it's many, many, many different. But we can understand it in 5 different ones. The primitive one, that is intended for the first incarnations of the human soul. Trial and expiation, where evil dominates. Regenerative, where souls who still have something to expiate but absorb new strength by resting from the fatigue of struggle. Hap, where the good outweighs evil. And heavenly or divine, the habitations of purified spirit, where the good reigns completely. So we're trying to get here, right? So here, this is what we are, the progress that we keep going and trying to incarnate and reincarnate here all the time to get that progress, right? So you're trying to get here as soon as you can, of course. It takes time, but we're gonna get there sometime. The earth today, it's a trial and expiation word, so there's 2 more for us to go through. But the good news is that we are getting to the regenerative world, and there's a lot of publications about it. The latest one, I think it was 2010, a book psychographed by Divaldo Franco that talk about the transitory planetary transitory thank you. Planetary transition, right? It's the most recent one, I think, and but it was already wrote in the Genesis that it would come, right? So the very last chapter of Genesis talks about the signs of the times, and it says it progressed physically through the transformation of the elements that compose it, and morally through the purification of incarnate and disincarnate spirits that populate it. Both of these areas of progress accompany each other and march in parallel, because the perfecting of the habitation is in the keeping with the perfecting of the inhabitant. So, as I said, it is technology and morally, all the science, not only technology, but the science per se, will progress with us. And we always think about this transformation to happen like this, right? It will be a huge transformation, and we realize that happened over time, like what happened with Noah and the Ark, right? That the story tells us that we have the earth was underwater, and just a few people that were selected by God that they would create this new world, right? But it's not like that. Kardec brings us that it's through the spirits that bring us that it's gonna happen very, very slowly, and it's already happening. We know that from many different mediums that brought that message to us, that it's already happening, and it will take time. But it's also funny that we get very shocked with things that happen and destroy a lot of things at the same time, like a tsunami. Years ago we had a tsunami, and everybody, oh my God, why that happened? Blah blah blah. We are expecting for the transformation to happen, and when something big happen, we get shocked. But that's part of that transformation as well. In the Spirit's book again, we have the law of destruction. And in the question 728, it says, it's necessary for everything to be destroyed in order to be reborn and regenerated. That you call destruction is no more than transformation that is aimed to renew and improve living beings. So that those things that we call a destruction that we get shocked with, it's helping us in two ways. One, the material, when we have that thing happen, we are trying to anticipate that for next time when it happens, right? We try to create technology, to create things to be able to anticipate and save lives when that happens again, right? So now everybody is monitoring what happened in the earth to see if we're gonna have another tsunami and protect people in advance, taking them out of the area of risk. So all of that happened, but it also help those spirits that disincarnate. And we can think, all those spirits that were there was bad spirits, not so evolved spirit that was there to suffer that. What about the good ones? We had good people there. A lot of people. I cannot believe that everyone that was there in the beach in a nice hotel was bad people, right? We may have good people there as well, but that is part of this progression, this law that it happens, and we need to. He showed me the hour, and I got just checking. Sorry, guys. And that's okay. So it will bring this transformation, this disasters, like we say, will help those spirits when they disincarnate as well. So they are part of that, and help those that is still incarnated, right? Because we feel sorry about that situation, and a lot of people will try to help those that got their houses or seriously devastated, and sending food, doing charity to help those people. So it's a way to help that transformation to happen morally and in a mature way. Okay. And it's also talks in the last chapter, the new generation, that says in order for people to be happy on the earth, it must be populated only by good incarnated and disincarnated spirits, who desire nothing but the good. On such time has come, there will be a great emigration from among those who inhabit the earth. And it continues saying, the present age is one of transition. The members of both generations are mixed together. Stating on the midpoint, we are watching the departure of one and the arrival of the other. So it's happening, and we know that those spirits that are not progressing with the earth will be sent to another planet. Is that a punishment? Many people may say, "Oh, that's a punishment. We're punishing that person, that spirit, for not being, progressing according to the earth." But the reality is that it's not a punishment. He has been sent to another planet where everything that that spirit knows about Earth will help with that other civilization. And that is what happened with Earth many years ago when, if you read the book that talks about Capella, another planet, another constellation, that a lot of spirit came here, and help Earth to progress, right? So they learned a little bit more, and they were able to then go back to Capella when they came here, did the work that they were supposed to do, and learn about what they were supposed to learn. So they were able to go back. So it's not that because they were sent to another planet for a couple of years that they cannot come back. They will come back as soon as they get ready to be in the same stage that Earth is. And in the Spirit's book, going back to the Spirit's book for a very quick thing, it talks about the Spiritism influence on the progress. So one of Kardec's questions was, in what way can Spiritism contribute to progress, right? And the Spirit answered, by destroying materialism, one of the swords of society. It enables people to comprehend where their true interests lie. Since the future life is no longer veiled by doubt, men and women will better understand that they can ensure their future based on the present, destroying the prejudice of sex, caste, or color. Spiritism teaches them about the great solidarity that must unite them as brothers and sisters. So that's the Spiritism, what Spiritism can help in the progress, right? So Kardec, as a scientist, he wanted to know how the Spiritism could help on this progress that is happening. But Spiritism is just a doctrine, right? A science that we need to. The Spiritism can bring us a lot of teachings and a lot of lessons to learn, but the main thing is how we change the world, each one of us. And in the Gospel according to Spiritism, we have that saying, a sentiment of compassion must always animate the heart of those who gather under the Lord's sign to implore the assistance of good spirits. Therefore, purify your heart. Do not let any mundane or futile thought linger in it. Lift up your spirit to those who are calling, so that, finding in you the proper dispositions, they may profusely sow the seed that should germinate in your soul and produce within in the fruit of charity and justice. So basically, we have science, we have Spiritism, we have church, we have many things that can help us, but it's within us to transform the world, right? It's us, each one of us here need to change a little bit, right? So in the Spirit's book, in questions 7 and 5, Kardec asked which is the most obstacle for the progress, and the answer was selfishness and pride. So we need to change those things in ourselves, right? And another good way to learn about what we need to do in the Gospel according to Spiritism, chapter 17, Be Perfect, it says that truly moral persons are those who practice the law of justice, love, and charity in its greatest purity. They question themselves if they did all the good they could have done. So each one of us is in a different stage of evolution, stage of learning, etc. So there is no a simple answer that do this or do that. Each one of us needs to ask ourselves, did I did everything that I could? Based on what we know, each one of us know. So that transformation will start with us following what Jesus bring as a teachings for us and the Spiritism. And those that are parents, that's another special responsibility, right? Helping a kid to go through this transformation with us. So it's a lot of responsibility for them. But it's each one of us. There's a moment that, each one of us are kind of alone with our own conscience, and the need to change need to come from us. I think that's it, what I have for today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So does anyone have any questions or comments?
Yes,
or
I do.
yes?
Yeah, go ahead.
I speak out so that everybody can listen. So first, thank you very much for bringing this message to us. It's a question, maybe it's not an easy question, but it would be very good to get your perspective about that, something that I've been thinking. According to Kardec, the Spiritism is not meant to be a religion, right? It's meant to be an explanation of what happened in the spiritual world. So out from this, I think two things that I like to understand. First is, if we need to look for a guide or help others look for a guide, and Spiritism is not the religion where it says you should do A, B, or C, could just any religion be used as a way for us to improve and to evolve our souls? So for instance, maybe the Bible or maybe another religion, because that's not the intent of the Spiritism itself. And one other thing that I thought is it wrong for us or for any spirit to understand Spiritism as a religion and say, okay, you cannot do this because according to Spiritism this is wrong? Because if it's not a religion, it's just an understanding, the answers about right and wrong are not within Spiritism. And in your opinion, sometimes we as spirits might make that mistake and might pay attention not to do that?
Yeah, I think there's two things. Answer your first question. There is no good religion, bad religion. Every religion is good, and because the basic of all of them is the same: love, right? God and love. So what happened is that we as human beings, we distorted what the teachings to control. And Spiritism is, Kardec saw Spiritism as a science, right? But we have three aspects of Spiritism that we say today. There is the religion aspect. Everything that we have in the gospel is kind of a religion. But it's not a religion where we're gonna have way of doing things. Each spirit center has their own decisions on how they will conduct their centers, right? So that's why he doesn't like to say there's a religion, because there is no
there are no hierarchy.
Hierarchy.
There are no priests. There are
No
rituals.
priests, yeah, no rituals. That was the word that I was looking for. Rituals that many religions have, right? We don't have those things. And then it's a religion. It's a science, because we continue evolving and learning about the spiritual world and how the spirituality will influence in Earth. And it's a philosophy, right? It's a way of acting, a way of living. So that's the three aspects of Spiritism. So that's why Kardec was so afraid to make it a religion, right? But in everything that he created was not with the intention to be, I'm a spiritist. I will just read these books, right? It's the intention that his intention was that everything that he wrote could be used by any religion. As well, we as spiritists, we need to be open to other things as well. Continue progressing. So, what was your second question? Sorry.
My second was that if he says that we should not face it as religion, do we as spirits might some face incurring the mistake of understanding as religion and enforcing a code of conduct that says, according to Spiritism, you should not do that, but actually this is our interpretation, not Spiritism.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what we need to be careful with. We should never say, "Oh, Spiritism says that. That's why I'm doing this." No, Spiritism says that. I think this is the right thing for me to do. It can be because of Spiritism, can be because of any other religion. It's our own decision, our free will to decide what we're gonna do. So there is not right or wrong based on the Spiritism. There is right or wrong based on what we understand, what we expect.
Can I say something?
Sure.
I like your question and I want to add something to it. It's just my opinion. I think religion is something that's cultural. Like people are used to have a religion to guide us. I think what we need really is knowledge, and I think Spiritism and other principles that we call like philosophies, right? They give this to you, and that's all you need. It's like when you go to school to have a profession, you're gonna have knowledge, but you need to make your own judgment out there. Like when you come to you're working, you have decisions to make, and it's up to you with your knowledge to use it and apply it. It's the same thing I think with pretty much with Spiritism and everything. You have the tools, you need to apply them how you think. That's my opinion.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
Anyone else would like to ask a question or yes?
What do we have for lunch?
Oh, come on, Fabio. Anyone online, Marco? Do we have any comment online? No? Okay. Thank you very much. So thank you, guys. We are now going to do our final prayer and we have our lunch after. So just going to ask the kids to come. Me, can you call the kids, please?